Hello and welcome, everyone. We have another reaction episode. Tonight, we're talking about The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 4. Just got through watching it, and I have taken quite a bit of notes for this episode. There was a whole lot that happened, a whole lot we want to get into. Starting the opening scene, it takes place in 2018, so we're going back 11 years from where we are with Dina and Ellie. It's in Seattle. It's showing Fedra. It's actually showing Isaac's origin story on how he came to the wolves. You can tell that he doesn't like the way that the wolves have become. They're mocking people. They don't have the ethical need, I guess, that he shares or thought he was sharing at one time. He ends up going and betraying essentially his crew and ends up saving one of them, which will come back into play later. One thing I wanted to point out here when we're talking about the Last of Us video game is Jeffrey Wright, the actor that was playing Isaac in the series, is also the voice actor behind Isaac in the video game. So that's another one of those things where it is really fun to see the person that you've heard throughout the game be able to become the role for the character that is in the live action. I really did enjoy that. And we're going to see Isaac more later as the episode goes on. And we'll see him more as the season goes on. The intro picks up. One thing that's been floating around social media is the intro now doesn't have Joel. So at the very end, you see it's just one person walking. It's not two anymore. But once the intro is over, we're right back to what is present day for us, 2029, with Dina and Ellie. They are in a pharmacy investigating an area in Seattle. And if you haven't played the game, you don't know what Dina sees that kind of catches her eye. But you will find out later in the episode that it was pregnancy tests. So it was neat the way that they brought that in, but there were no pregnancy tests in the game. She just, whenever she does finally tell Ellie, she just tells her that she was late. And that's why she thinks she's pregnant. Something I thought was kind of interesting too that takes place, or that we see now that will have an impact later on in the episode, is you see all of the pride flags around Seattle. And, they're like, what's with the rainbow flags? They don't understand what it is. But once we get later into the episode, you'll hear Dina talk about her past and how her parents had shame in what, or who she felt, she loves or likes for that matter. Diving right into the next part, they go into the music shop. This is my favorite scene of this season so far. I don't know if anything is going to be able to top it. I really enjoyed this part in the game too, and it is an optional piece that you can very easily miss. But in the game, when you go downstairs, Dina plays the drums or tries to play the drums very, very terribly, very similar to the way she did in the show. So that was appreciated. But let's just talk about Ellie grabbing the guitar, tuning it. Dina gets to sneak up and see her playing Take On Me by Aha. And this is such an insane scene in the game. And I really felt like both Isabella and Bella Ramsey killed this scene. They murdered it. It was absolutely beautiful. You can see the chemistry that Ellie and Dina have for each other in this one little serenading of Dina that Ellie is doing. I love that Bella Ramsey can play the guitar, and I love that she was able to do the song. I mean, there's just so many good things. I said it last week. Bella Ramsey is Ellie. It is what it is at this point. You can't deny it. If you disagree, then, congratulations on your opinion, but to me, you're wrong. Yes, we can go all day. She doesn't look the part, but my God, the role itself, she is nailing it. And I loved that piece for the Take On Me. It is just, yeah, I don't know. I loved it. And what I really liked even more was how she set the guitar down and walked away, and you just see that shot of the guitar with the light coming in behind it, and it was very reminiscent of almost like one of the start scenes you would see for The Last of Us, especially almost like an ode to Joel, I guess. When she very lovingly says that he did a good job teaching her. That was, I don't know, like chef's kiss. Love that scene. So moving on from there, we go right back to Isaac, and now we're in Isaac present day, and he's torturing a Scar. There's a piece where you will actually see the person that he saved from Fedra or gave the choice to decide whether he wants to die right there as an agent of Fedra or whether he wants to join the WLF. We see a darker, more sinister side of Isaac. He tells this beautiful tale about wanting to have this particular high-end set of cookware, and he uses that to burn the what he calls Scar, when that's more or less a slang, like a racial slang against them when they are called Seraphites. Thought it was a great scene to how the Seraphite said there are people who leave the wolves every day to take the oath and become, one of them, but nobody from the Seraphite leave to become a wolf. I think it's trying to portray Isaac as a little more forgiving than he actually is. In the games, he is a ruthless, heartless person, and just the little sentence of, we don't kill kids unless we have to. You train them to attack us. Like, that is not the case. Like, Isaac is brutal, and that's just the way he is in the game. Moving on from there, we go to the TV station. Some interesting parts that it leaves out in the game heading up there, seeing all the traps involved, all of just how to get there. And by this point in the game, too, you've already killed 2 of the members of Abby's gang that came with her to kill Joel. And we don't see those in the show because they did take away some of the characters. They get to the TV station. It was like a perfect replica of the way it is in the game, but with added brutality. Seeing the innards hanging from the people who are being hanged, and just all of the hate and destruction that you see in that TV station. What we miss out on is they actually find another member of Abby's crew there, who the Seraphites got to before Ellie and Dina make it there. But that character was not in the show, so they don't get to see that part of it. And that's actually when they get Polaroids and different pictures of each of Abby's gang, and they know, what Abby looks like and who everyone looks like that they are going to be going after and hunting. Just like in the game, when the backup comes for the wolf, you have to run and flee, and you end up running down into the metro or the subway area. And this was another part that, as somebody who played the games, I loved the way they set the scene. I loved the lighting. It really felt like a good representation of what it is to be in that subway, knowing, like, you hear the clickers around, and you also hear the wolf, like, the Washington Liberation Front trying to come after you and find you. With the game, you can just throw a bottle or a brick and break it near one of the members of the WLF, and the clickers and the runners will take off and go try and kill them. But in this one, it ended up being a horde. And there was a great intensity to the way that scene was shot. I really enjoyed it. There wasn't as much that happens in the game. It's more of an atmospheric, like, terror kind of thing. It's not like, here are these hundreds of infected coming after you and it's about to get, bad. They skipped over what would have been like shamblers and spores because they're not getting to that yet, but we'll get back on that later. But anyway, so they eventually do try to get away from the horde. They run. Ellie ends up sacrificing herself, shoving her arm in the mouth of the runner that made it to him in order for Dina not to get bit. And they end up at the theater, just like they do when they're leaving the subway running from the horde in the video game. Now, here's where things start to take some different turns compared to the way that the game was set up. When we're talking about the game, there are spores involved. There are shamblers who release this like acidic, just mist of spores that can actually burn people up and cause infections. As they're running from the horde in the game, they've got masks on to protect themselves from the spores. And Ellie ends up getting hers busted. And there's a hole in it. Dina panics and she's like, Ellie, your mask. And when Ellie realizes it, she's like, oh crap. Ellie knows she's going to be fine, but Dina doesn't know that she's immune. Dina instantly starts trying to take off her mask, and she's like, we'll share mine and we'll just try and make it. And Ellie pins her against a wall and, holds Dina's mask on her face. And she says, wait, I'm immune. And Dina, of course, doesn't believe it. So Ellie pulls off her mask and just breathes in the spores. And she's like, look, I'm not coughing. I'm not dying. I'm not turning. I'm immune. And it freaks Dina out. She doesn't react the way she did in the show where, in her head in the show, because Ellie got bit, she's already tracking through her head like, I've got to put her down. I can't let the person who is right now the love of her life turn and become this just brainless beast. And it's a heavier hit, I guess, on Dina's character for the show. Whereas in the game, it's more, okay, yeah, it's immediate. Like, you are breathing in the spores. You are okay. You are fine. What the hell and why did I know? And, she immediately says, Tommy knew, Maria knows, and Joel knows, or Joel knew. And, she's just like, okay, and they roll with it, and then they escape. So when they get to the theater in the show, they have this big showdown because Dina thinks that Ellie's infected. Ellie talks her into waiting until, she wakes up to show that she's not changed. And when she wakes up, Dina instantly has this like wave of just relief wash over her. And in that same moment, like realizing that Ellie really does mean a lot to her, she turns and, basically says, I'm pregnant, and then jumps all over Ellie. I thought it was funnier in the game, the way that Dina is kind of like, I'm pregnant, and Ellie starts freaking out, and Dina's like, well, it's not yours if that's what you're wondering. That little comedic gist, I guess. I was hoping it was going to be, that little jab was going to be in the show, but it wasn't, but whatever. They end up coming to terms with it basically pretty quick, where Ellie's like, I'm going to be a dad. It's going to be me, you, Jesse, and our kid. Whoa. It's very different the way it plays out in the game, because Ellie is very upset, and it's very hurtful what she says to Dina too, because, she's like, when did you know? And she's like, well, I've been late a couple weeks, I've been late before. It's not like it's that big of a deal, but, now with the vomiting she's been doing, she thinks, I think I could be pregnant, and I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to be a burden. And Ellie's like, well, you're a burden now. And it's terrible the way it played out in the game, but it hits a little harder because it is one of those where, to me, like in the moment of her saying, Ellie, I'm pregnant, and just jumping on her, and they're having their little lovemaking scene, in the game, it really is like, it's got to be me and you right now because there's nobody else, and you're going to turn your back on me and say I'm a burden. It really goes directly into the intense emotions that Ellie is feeling, just her need for revenge when it comes to the game. That's one thing I'll say, is they do seem to make Ellie just a little bit softer in the show, and maybe that's to make her a little more relatable as a character, more likable, I guess. But that's not the way that we would have seen Ellie act in the game. But again, I do love both Isabella and Bella Ramsey's chemistry together. I love that they finally had their moment, which, happens back in Jackson in the game. But they realize like, hey, we're in it together, and it's a really cute realization scene, I guess. Really romantic scene where Ellie's just, it's no question. She's just like, all right, well, I'm a dad. It's like I said, big differences from the game, but I don't hate it necessarily. And it is what it is, especially since by this point in the game, Tommy's already been out there raising hell, and Tommy's not leaving now because in the show they invented a son for him, and because he's got the son, it seems like he's not leaving. The episode then ends. They hear the radio go off, hear explosions. They go up on the roof, and they hear that Nora is at Lake Hill. So we know that that is their next destination. They're potentially going to finally come face to face with one of the members of Abby's gang. We only have 3 more episodes left this season. They've got a lot. If it's going to end where I believe it will end, which will be, in my opinion, it will be at the theater. I won't go any further than that for those of you who are just watching the show and haven't played the game. There's a lot that's got to happen. And that's not even factoring that in the game at this point, when you first get into the theater and you've heard Dina's feelings and you're going off by yourself exploring, you get power to the theater, and once you have power there, you enter a flashback where Ellie is, I want to say, 16th birthday with Joel. So I'm hoping we do get to see that next week. I'm hoping we get the flashback episode where there's going to be dinosaurs and a museum. We'll leave it at that, but hopefully that's next week. However, one of the biggest things I did see that's coming next week are spores. No leak. I don't know what kind of infected they're making this out to be, but it did show it in the preview. Like the thing just puffed out a big wave of spores towards Ellie. Ellie, of course, doesn't have to wear a mask. Ellie's immune, but I'm wondering how they're going to play this out as we move forward. That is everything that I had for tonight's episode. I am so glad you guys hung out with me. Listen to what I have to say. Please subscribe, share, tell your friends. Let's get in on this together. We can have a discussion, leave a comment. I'll answer back. I want to hear where you think this is going, especially if you have not played the game and this is a fresh watch for you. I'm curious as to what you think is about to happen next. Coming up this week, I do have Gerald's take on The Last of Us that may be coming out at some point this week. There was another episode I was looking at doing that was going to be more PlayStation 5 focused upcoming games for 2025 for the remainder of the year. I'm not sure if I'll be able to push that out or not. I did have somewhat of a family emergency that's pulled me away from being able to do anything this week. So if you don't see anything from me this week, I will catch up with you guys next week after The Last of Us episode. And I, am excited to see where this is going. We only have 3 more episodes left this season, and there is a lot that has to happen. But I do appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. Just remember, the signal is weak, but the stories are strong. Take care.